You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill news for Wednesday, March 27th. Well, guys, we are almost through the eye of the storm. Just a couple of key things have to happen still, and one of them is the full exposure of every single individual involved in the counterintelligence operation to remove President Trump from office. And when I say full exposure, I mean outside of our circle. The rest of America needs to know. And here we have Senator Rand Paul breaking the news that a high-level source told him that it was John Brennan himself, who insisted that the unverified and fake Steele dossier be included in the intelligence report. Brennan should be asked to testify under oath in Congress ASAP. Now, outside of setting a perjury trap, I don't know how much good that's going to do. I don't know that we're going to get much additional information from John Brennan, but we may be able to set him up on charges of perjury, since we already know John Brennan's proclivities for lying to Congress. From the Gateway Pundit, we have an article here breaking down this fact that Rand Paul put out for the rest of the world today, something that Anons definitely already knew. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky announced Wednesday that, according to a high-level source, former CIA Chief John Brennan insisted Hillary's fake Russia dossier be included in the intelligence report. Brennan previously denied that the fake dossier was used in the intelligence community's assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election. There is plenty of evidence to the contrary, and on Wednesday, Senator Rand Paul said Brennan should be asked to testify under oath in Congress ASAP. This month, Virtual Shield is offering a spring special of 30% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans for as low as $3 per month. And don't forget about IdentiSafe, which allows the customer the ability to block off computer microphone and camera access from any unwanted spies and hackers. Remember, Virtual Shield is one of the easiest VPNs to use in the world. It's also one of the fastest. Their no-log policy protects its users from any data breaches. So go to virtualshield.com/redpill78 and sign up for your free month along with 35% off at this exclusive link. There is the tweet that Rand put out. In the late summer of 2016, then FBI Director James Comey was notified that former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid would be sending him a letter asking him to investigate the Trump campaign's alleged ties to Russia. Harry Reid's letter was written a week after he met with John Brennan, raising suspicion that Brennan briefed Reid on the fake Steele dossier. Reid's letter was then leaked to the New York Times just before Election Day. John Brennan said during a February 2018 appearance on Meet the Press that he learned about the dossier in December of 2016 and that it did not play any role whatsoever in the intelligence community assessment that was done and was presented to then President Barack Obama and then President-elect Trump. But it gets worse. John Brennan told the House Intelligence Committee in a May 2017 hearing that the dossier was not part of the intelligence used to assess Russian interference in the 2016 election. The dossier, Brennan testified, was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. Former House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes was reportedly investigating whether Brennan perjured himself during his 2017 testimony to the committee. Rand Paul's right. It's time for Congress to drag Brennan back in and question him under oath ASAP. There's nothing better that we could hope for than for Brennan to be brought up on charges of perjury, since we know that he has lied and he loves to lie. But there are a good number of other people who need to be exposed too. And today it wasn't just Brennan that was exposed. It was also President Obama. Watch here from my friend The Sharp Edge as James Clapper responds to Sarah Sanders' calls to investigate himself, Brennan, Comey, and the others involved in that Russia hoax. He is about to throw Obama directly under the bus.
Well, now that Robert Mueller is done investigating the president, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is calling on Congress to investigate former top U.S. intelligence officials.
If Congress is so gung-ho to call people up to the Hill, the list I would start with are Comey, Clapper, Brennan, and other people in the FBI who perpetuated this absurd lie and this absurd idea that the President of the United States was somehow a foreign agent and colluding with another government.
Well, joining us now is former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, author of Facts and Fears, Hard Truths from a Life of Intelligence, and was named there by Sarah Sanders. So, Director Clapper, what is your reaction to what Sanders said?
Well, first, I wonder if she was conflating or confusing collusion, whatever that is, with the Russian interference. And certainly those of us that she named, John Brennan and Jim Comey and I, are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference.
Coming straight from the top, folks, President Obama tasked them with making sure they exposed who was involved with Russian interference. And that is a backhanded way of framing President Trump for this supposed interference by the Russians, because that's exactly what they did from the very start. They tied Russian interference to the Trump campaign. And now that everything's come out, we know that they're not even remotely one and the same. And the idea of Russian interference in itself is laughable. We have social media companies, we have search engines who had a bigger effect on the election, not only 2016, but also 2018. There was a major shift in 2018, and that was due in no small part to the social manipulation that was done by these companies to prop up Democratic candidates and to suppress Republican candidates. So what I'd like to see is an investigation into those companies that so clearly meddled in our election and sought to push one candidate before the other. Now, on the note of election interference, from my friend Methods, Lindsey Graham has a message to the Dems and the mainstream media. If it was the Republicans, they would be up in arms. Well, the Democrats tried to pretend it was the Republicans, and they were up in arms. But now the truth has come out, and it's actually the Democrats. Let's take a listen to what Lindsey had to say.
If the Republican Party had hired Mr. Steele to do opposition research against Hillary Clinton, and the dossier prepared against Clinton came from Russian sources that was a bunch of garbage, and it was used 4 times to get a warrant against a Clinton associate, she would be screaming bloody murder. If the 2 people in charge of investigating Clinton liked Trump and wanted Clinton to lose, it would be a very big deal. All I can say to my Democratic friends, if the shoe were on the other foot, and to the media, you would be burning this place down. The double standard here just is to high heaven. There's no way in hell they would give the Republican Party a pass if we did exactly what the Democrats did here, hire a foreign agent to produce a dossier against them that was a bunch of garbage. Why not care about this? Every American should believe and have confidence in the judicial system. Did the DOJ, the top people, the FBI, the top people, not the rank and file, did they take the law in their own hands? Did they produce to the court a document that was unverified to get a warrant just to make sure they could get into the Trump campaign? So the bottom line is, did they take the law in their own hands to create a political weapon with it?
And I think we know the answer is yes. The Democrats were the ones who were colluding, not only with the foreign government, Ukraine and Russia, but also the mainstream media. They did everything in their power to ensure that President Trump would not be elected. The entire last 2 years have been made up of one giant witch hunt, one humongous set of misinformation. And now that the word is out, the shoe is on the other foot, and it's going to be necessary for us to actually turn around and investigate them. We must show that you cannot have a different set of laws for one party versus another party. Now, speaking of Ukraine, from Sarah A. Carter, The Hill says U.S. Embassy pressured Ukraine not to investigate liberal mega donor. During the 2016 U.S. presidential race, Ukrainian prosecutors said they were stymied by then President Obama's appointed U.S. ambassador to Ukraine from pursuing investigations into the activities of a nonprofit known as the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Sounds great, according to John Solomon with The Hill. Ukraine's prosecutor, General Yuri Lutsenko, who is considered a hero in the West for spending 2 years as a political prisoner for fighting Russian aggression in Ukraine, told Solomon that he was invited to meet new U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. He was appointed to this position in 2016, and it was then that he spoke with Yovanovitch, he said. He said, "They gave me a list of people whom we should not prosecute." According to Yovanovitch, it included a founder of the Ant-AC group and 2 members of parliament. Those people supported the group's anti-corruption reform agenda, according to a source directly familiar with the meeting, according to Solomon, who spoke to a source. Ukrainian law enforcement was probing a group that was co-founded by the Obama administration, as well as billionaire donor George Soros. Further, according to Solomon, the group was allegedly collaborating with the FBI agents investigating then-Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort's business activities in Ukraine. The focus on Ant-AC, whose youthful street activists, who famously wore Ukraine corruption t-shirts, was part of a larger probe by Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office into whether $4.4 million in U.S. funds to fight corruption inside the former Soviet Republic had been improperly diverted. The prosecutors soon would learn the resistance they faced was blowing directly from the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, where the Obama administration took the rare step of trying to press the Ukrainian government to back off its investigation of both the U.S. aid and the group. The investigation into the Anti-Corruption Action Center, based on the assistance they have received from us, is similarly misplaced, then Embassy Charged Affairs George Kent wrote the prosecutor's office in April 2016, in a letter that also argued U.S. officials had no concerns about how the U.S. aid had been spent. Well, it sure looks like they are attempting to cover up for someone or something, not the least of which was Obama's best friend, George Soros, and also not to mention the investigation into Ukrainian parliament members who were trying to help Hillary Clinton and give her a leg up in the election by giving up that information on Paul Manafort. So this goes much farther than anyone had previously considered. We knew that our intelligence community had directly associated with members of the intelligence communities of the Five Eyes group. But it looks here like the Obama administration as a whole, many fingers were in many different areas. This operation went so far and so wide. As we get more and more pieces, the dominoes are going to fall at a rapid rate. This is great news, and kudos to Sarah Carter and John Solomon. And next, from Breitbart, on the subject of the shoe being on the other foot, Devin Nunes is sending criminal referrals to the DOJ over Spygate. He says it's time to go on the offensive, and I agree with you, Rep. House Intelligence Committee ranking member Devin Nunes from California is planning to send a criminal referral next week to the Justice Department that will detail multiple referrals on a number of different crimes, including leaking classified information as part of his investigation into misconduct at the Justice Department and the FBI. Watch out, Adam Schiff. As of now, it'll be one criminal referral, but with multiple referrals on a number of different crimes, he told Breitbart News on Wednesday in an exclusive interview. We will have some leakers in there for sure. We knew this was a joke from the beginning, and I've said as much for a long time. Basically, from the time our report came out, which has been a year. But now the real work begins. It's good to not have that sitting out there, but we have to now go on the offense and track down all these dirty cops and bad players, he said. In addition, Nunes plans to interview about 50 people, some who have never been called before Congress, who were involved or know about the pushing of the P dossier within various U.S. government agencies and its use to get a surveillance warrant on former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Nunes, who took a beating from mainstream news outlets for challenging the Russian collusion narrative, wants to get to the bottom of how it all began. which he said was long before the FBI claims they officially began their investigation of the Trump campaign in late July 2016. It all stems from the fact that we know that this investigation started long before the end of July, he said. We are quite confident that this investigation started long before they told us that it did. He said it reaches all the way to the Obama White House, though it is not yet clear how involved President Barack Obama was. Look, there's big problems that the public needs to know about. Maximum transparency is the best thing here, he said. Nunes said he believes Barr will have to act on his criminal referral. There will be things in there that cannot be ignored. There will be crimes, so they have to be dealt with, he told Breitbart. He told Fox News on Tuesday he would target people who lied to Congress, perjury, and criminal conspiracy. As far as his Democrat colleagues who have not given up on the idea that Trump campaign colluded with Russia, he said, referring to the mythical beast, these guys are chasing a chupacabra. That really is what they're looking for. Unicorns, the Loch Ness Monster, they're interchangeable, he said. Nunes said the question of whether his Democrat colleague, Representative Adam Schiff, should resign as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee should be directed to Democratic leadership. I'll let our leadership speak to that. My job is to work with whoever is there. At the end of the day, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi makes the decision. But I'll just say I think more real journalists need to ask real questions to Team Chupacabra, he said. I love Devin Nunes. All right, so it looks like we are finally going to see it. We're going on the offensive. We have real crimes that were committed. These referrals cannot be ignored by Attorney General Barr. Attorney General Barr is going to act, and we are going to see these people finally get what they deserve. Now, in the news of people not getting what they deserve, this is another tweet from my friend Sharp Edge. Assistant State's Attorney Joe Maggots, who dropped all the charges after Fox recused herself from the case, told reporters on Tuesday that Jussie Smollett was guilty after he dropped all the charges. Can you believe this stuff?
But this is what Joe Maggots, Assistant State Attorney, said today about this. Let's watch.
Is Mr. Smollett innocent of the charges against him?
No, he is not.
And what leads you to say that?
Well, we stand behind the Chicago Police Department investigation. They did an outstanding job, an incredibly professional and phenomenal job in investigating this case. Based on all of that, we stand behind their investigation. We stand behind our decision to charge him.
Rafer, it looks like he was passing a kidney stone there. He did not look happy to be doing that interview. I mean, that was
he seems
brutal.
to be in an uncomfortable position.
So what I want to know is if Jussie Smollett is guilty, then why did they drop all the charges? Well, it's got political favor written all over it. And as I said yesterday, the Chicago Police Department is not happy. They have released files on the Jussie Smollett case here. There is the guilty man himself. CWB Chicago filed a Freedom of Information Act request under the Illinois Freedom of Information Act on Tuesday, March 26th. This was after the state's attorney's office under Kim Foxx dropped all charges against the disgusting hate hoaxer. CWB Chicago said these files were provided by the Chicago Police Department in response to a FOIA request that CWB Chicago submitted upon learning that the Cook County State's Attorney's Office had reached a sealed agreement to resolve Smollett's criminal exposure in the case. Our requests for video, including body cam surveillance and interrogation, was denied. Now, these files are fairly large. We're going to go ahead and take a look at these in two separate tranches. So, let's see. I tweeted this out this morning when this happened, but I'm glad that they went ahead and covered it so I can get a good visual for you guys. Here is the original supplementary report, and you can see lots of information is redacted, talking about the officers that arrived. The original type of incident was aggravated battery to the hands, fist, feet, minor injury, and they were immediately on with the subpoenas to get the security camera. Here's a look at the approval for false reports against from Jussie Smollett to the police, faking his aggravated battery with an undetermined motive. And here's a search warrant issued pertaining to the Apple Incorporated held iCloud account. So as we had said before, they had all of his records very early on. Here, this is detailing the check that Smollett wrote, along with $100 cash that he gave the brothers so that they could go purchase their outfits for the attack. And then this goes through their tracking of the movements of these brothers on their way for the fake hate hoax. This is information about communications made between Smollett and people probably trying to get his story straight. This here is a description of Smollett's arrest and his being taken to the police station to be fingerprinted and booked. Here is the second set of documents, 22 pages than this one. Smollett made false reports to police claiming to be the victim of an aggravated battery with undetermined motive. The contents of this report, including interviews, are in essence and not verbatim unless otherwise noted by quotation marks. Initially, Smollett stated while walking to his residence he was approached by two offenders who engaged in racial and homophobic slurs directed at Smollett. The offenders then struck the victim about the face and body, causing minor injuries. Investigation revealed that a plan was formulated and put into play by Smollett to conduct a staged incident where Smollett was beaten by blank and blank, those are the two Nigerian brothers, posing as persons other than themselves. Based on the information above, R&D requested this case be reclassified from an aggravated battery, hands, fist, feet, minor injury, to a public peace violations, other violation. This details the officers' attempts to receive the footage from security cameras along the route back to Jesse Smollett's home in the areas where the brothers would have been when they were tracking him, or where Jesse would have been when he was apparently attacked. As we all know, Chicago has a ridiculous number of security cameras, and I believe they had some trouble locating exactly where these brothers were, and that's how they really knew that Smollett was not telling the truth, because his story and their movements just did not add up. And then, of course, they have the actual footage of the brothers buying the goods that were used in the attack on Smollett. Finally tonight, in some new information on the NXIVM trial of Claire Bronfman, she fainted in court today after the Judge Garofis, asked if Michael Avenatti secretly represented her, and we all know that Michael Avenatti is currently behind bars. What a hearing this turned out to be today. Claire Bronfman fainted in court today after Judge Nicholas G. Garofis asked her if Michael Avenatti was secretly representing her and trying to negotiate a deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office in the NXIVM case. The hearing will resume tomorrow. After a sidebar to discuss claims of attorney-client privilege, Claire Bronfman fainted. Bronfman's faint, which at least one observer thought was faked, occurred after the sidebar, which was called after the judge asked her, "Did you retain Mr. Avenatti to represent you in this case, yes or no?" She never answered. She became rigid in her chair and collapsed. After her faint, she was wheeled on a stretcher by paramedics into a conference room where she was treated. An ambulance was called, but evidently canceled. The hearing was put on hold. After about an hour, Bronfman seemed to recover. She was led to a car, walking, holding onto Garagos' arm. Garagos was Avenatti's co-defendant in that case in which Michael Avenatti is currently facing many, many decades behind bars. Garagos declined to answer questions, saying they would be answered tomorrow when the hearing resumes. In what can be called a shocking development, Eastern District of New York First Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Lesko revealed on the record that in addition to having Mark Garagos as an attorney, Claire had also retained the recently arrested Michael Avenatti. Lesko said he met with both Garagos and Avenatti the last week about this case. The defense lawyers asked that the record of today's entire hearing be sealed. Judge Garofis refused their request. Avenatti has not entered a notice of appearance for Bronfman, but it is now clear that he and Garagos have been trying to negotiate some sort of plea deal with the EDNY on behalf of Claire. On Monday, Avenatti was arrested and charged with extortion, and his unnamed co-conspirator has been identified as Garagos. When asked if he was Avenatti's co-conspirator in the Nike extortion case, Geragos declined to confirm that he is in fact CC1. In deference to the Southern District of New York, under DOJ policy, that's not something they disclose, Geragos said. Asked if he's a cooperator, he said no and walked away from reporters. The hearing today was focused on the potential conflict of interest involving the various attorneys representing Bronfman and Rainier. Claire Bronfman is still represented by Mark Geragos, and at last report, Keith Rainieri is still represented by Tenny Geragos, Mark's daughter, and Mark Agnifilio. Geragos admitted Avenatti does represent Claire, but didn't know if Avenatti intended to file a notice of appearance in the case because of the other case. He did not say on the record if the other case was Avenatti's criminal case in the SDNY case or one of Bronfman's pending civil suits. Perhaps most interesting of all, even more interesting than Avenatti's representation of Claire, is that the heiress is secretly trying to work out a plea deal. It was revealed by Moira Penza at the status conference on March 18th that 3 of the defendants are working on plea deals. Who were the 3? Although she did not say, it was widely assumed that it was Allison Mack, Lauren Saltzman, and Kathy Russell. The question now is, was Claire one of the 3? If so, then who is the lone defendant, other than Rainieri, not seeking a plea deal? And if Claire is the 4th one of them, then it's everyone against Rainieri. Imagine Rainieri's shock when he learned that, to Bronfman, she is looking to save herself from her own vanguard. Rainieri was in court today, and reports from courtroom observers say that his shoulder-length hair and soft features give him a decidedly feminine look. He also appeared less red-faced than usual. His reaction to the news about Claire is secretly trying to get a plea deal was not clear. Here's an update. The judge seemed angry at Claire Bronfman, accusing her of being untruthful at a previous hearing concerning how she had found Mark Geragos. Claire said then that she had found Geragos online. The judge quipped, like an online dating service? Today, the judge, in an angry tone, said he learned that Geragos had a pre-existing relationship with the Bronfman family. Then there was this issue of another attorney, Avenatti, secretly being involved. I want the truth, Judge Garofis said in a stern and admonishing tone. Claire, who has long been known to be allergic to the truth, then collapsed or staged her collapse. Her attorneys gathered around her. Paramedics came in about a half hour and then put her on a stretcher. They took her into a room with windows papered over. Later, we were told that it had been recommended that she go to the hospital, but she didn't want to. She wanted to go home. She was still arm in arm with Geragos when they left the court. The question has been raised whether Claire will actually appear tomorrow or get a medical excuse that will make her unfit to appear. Tomorrow, Claire will almost certainly be asked how she happened to retain Avenatti. If she got Geragos from online research, how did she happen to retain Avenatti? The answer would likely seem to be that Geragos recommended him, which is probably not something that Geragos would like them to have come out in court. The judge has a challenge. He could remove Geragos from the case, but that could make it an issue on appeal, and the judge denying her the choice of her attorney. On the other hand, Geragos might be arrested during the trial, which would cause a mistrial. This is not an easy decision for Judge Garofis. A second court observer said the judge was actually yelling, screaming at Claire, demanding she tell the truth about how she found her attorneys. That's when she fainted. It was obviously a fake faint. One observer said, I can just imagine when the medics showed up to treat Claire, they said, oh my God, we have a malnourished individual. Keep in mind that as Claire was sneaking in the back door with Avenatti trying to make a plea deal, her money was paying for all the other attorneys in the case, including Rainieri's attorneys. As previously noted, Geragos and Avenatti were very busy last week. They had at least 2 meetings and 1 conference call with Nike's lawyers, as they tried to convince the company to shell out $22.5 to $25 million to avoid the release of embarrassing information about the company's involvement with high school and college basketball players. That led to Avenatti being arrested and Geragos' possible indictment. They also had the meeting with Mark Lesko, the newly named Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the EDNY, to discuss a possible plea deal for Claire Bronfman. It is not known whether any agreement was reached and or whether those negotiations are ongoing. It is not known if they were both also involved in the negotiations that led to the shocking dismissal of 16 state felony counts against Jussie Smollett, another of Geragos' clients. Hopefully, not for their sake, because according to several sources, the FBI is now investigating how that dismissal came about. We can only hope that that investigation by the FBI bears some wicked, wicked fruit. Yeah, I would have to say that Claire Bronfman looks fairly malnourished, that's right. So, yeah, how did Claire Bronfman come to retain Mark Geragos and Michael Avenatti? So, it would appear, and this is news to me since this recently came out this week, that there's a pre-existing relationship between Geragos and Avenatti. Now, if there is a pre-existing relationship also between Geragos and the Bronfmans, does that mean that Geragos has something to do with NXIVM? I suppose that's something that we will find out. It would not surprise me at all. We're going to have to keep an eye on this one, and I'm going to give you guys a little tip. Hopefully on Saturday, I'm going to be interviewing someone that can tell us some information about this very subject. I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to be traveling this weekend. So Friday night, I am going to be playing a pre-recorded interview, but I will be doing it live, and I will be in the chat room, so I'll be hanging out with you guys. And then on Saturday, I will actually be broadcasting live from my hotel room. So I hope everybody can join me for Friday and Saturday night live stream, and don't miss out on Thursday's show too. It's going to be a doozy. I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.